Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending our third webinar in our 2020 PBIS webinar conference. This is being presented by the West Virginia Behavior Mental Health Technical Assistance Center. The TA Center is a collaboration between West Virginia Autism Training Center at Marshall University and the West Virginia Department of Education's Office of Special Education and Student Support. This 2020 PBIS webinar conference was a plan put in place when we learned that we needed to cancel our annual conference, and we're so thankful and blessed that so many of our presenters agreed to do it in this format. A couple housekeeping items. We're going to keep everybody muted except for the presenter. This is being recorded, and we will be posting it to our YouTube page later today or tomorrow morning, and then it will also be on our social media page. And if you haven't joined our social media page, you can go to Facebook and type in WV PBIS, and you can be up to date with all the happenings that are occurring with the TA Center. Also, we have been having some counties and some individuals that have been needing to certify their attendance. So at the end of this, when Meredith is finished presenting or almost finished presenting, we will share a link to a sign-in survey, and that survey will ask for some personal details from you about what county, what school that you work at, some feedback for our webinar conference and for our presenter, and it'll give you a chance to ask Meredith any follow-up questions. And that we're on a tight time frame today, so those follow-up questions will be shared with Meredith from that survey if you have any of those. And of course, that, as I mentioned, that will be coming at the end. What will happen is after you fill out that survey and press submit, it will pop up a certification attendance with the details of what today's webinar is. And you can either screenshot that or print that off. And then if you need extra verification, you can contact us at the TA Center and we can provide that for you. So let's get this started. Today, we're so lucky to have Meredith Dailer join us. Meredith is the associate principal and soon to be officially the head principal at Wheeling Park High School. Meredith is a former National Board Certified Teacher in Secondary Social Studies. After 9 years teaching at Wheeling Park High School, she moved into administration at Triadelphia Middle School. Her time at Triadelphia led her to the PBIS model. She guided TMS through a full Tier 1 implementation, which led to a 48% decrease in their school-wide discipline referrals. Upon moving to Wheeling Park High School, she again introduced, promoted, and implemented full Tier 1 PBIS. With a school of 140 teachers and over 1,000 discipline referrals a year, Wheeling Park is proud to show positive strides using their expectations of positive, respectful, and keep going. To date, discipline referrals at Wheeling Park are down 35%. Her PBIS team are currently working to develop and implement Tier 2 interventions to continue to grow PBIS at Wheeling Park. And so I'm going to let Meredith get started. We so appreciate you being here and can't wait to hear what you have to share with us.
All right, thank you for that introduction, Alicia. So this is big school, big problems, big solutions. Sorry, I'm still working through. There we go. And I do have it down as principal, but again, I started at Wheeling Park High School as a teacher. And when I moved back to Wheeling Park as a principal, we had a lot of issues that needed to be addressed. And I really, having had experience with PBIS at the middle school, felt like it was a structure that could really support our building in a very positive way. But I also recognized, with the school this size, implementation had its own issues. And so we had a lot of big problems, and we had to come up with a lot of big solutions. And those are the things I'll be highlighting today. Just to give you a little feel for Wheeling Park High School, we are located about 90 minutes, 60 miles south of Pittsburgh. We have students from 9th to 12th grades. We are a comprehensive high school with a career and technical program embedded. We have approximately 1,500 students. We have 142 teachers, and we have 200 total staff when you talk about paraprofessionals, custodians, etc. So it's a large school. Continuing in that conversation, obviously principal, we have an associate principal role that is now our dean of curriculum. our athletic director. We have 3 assistant principals that handle most of our discipline, and you can see their breakdown. We have 5 counselors, and then we are very blessed. We're one of the few schools in the state to have a mental health specialist. She actually has a doctorate in counseling, and we actually use an MTSS model with her and how she reaches our students. Our curriculum, we offer tiered academics. We have special ed, we have general ed, honors. We offer 22 AP courses. We also offer dual credit through West Liberty University as well as West Virginia Northern Community College. And then we have, again, our comprehensive career and technical program, 21 CTE programs. Over half of our student body take CTE courses. So we have a lot happening at Wheeling Park. And I think one of the most important things to talk about is really our student population. You know, in a lot of areas, I'm from Fairmont, and so at Fairmont Senior, you had really a kind of a city population, but at North Marion High School, you have a very rural population. What's difficult about Wheeling Park is that we have all of that. We have the highest of the highs, we have the lowest of the lows, we have kids that basically live in an inner city type experience if they live on the island or in South Wheeling, and then we have very, very rural pieces that go out into our country. And so we have a lot of just differences that make it even more difficult to kind of address our student body as a whole. So when I think about our school and when I came as an administrator, these were the big problems that we were facing. The first being this assistant principal continuity. What we had come to see is that our assistant principals did not communicate with one another. There were no structured meetings among them. There was no continuity between, you know, what they did for certain discipline. It just kind of depended on who you got was the discipline that you received, and that was creating some lack of confidence among our staff. It was creating for them a fear to act. They were kind of living on an island without, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Just without something to catch them. Should they make a mistake? Should they have somebody? They just didn't have any of that communication built in to their department. So that was definitely an issue. We had a lot of turnover with our assistant principals. The amount of discipline that they were doing made this one of the worst jobs in the county. It was definitely just a one-stop stepping stone to the next position. And that, again, led to the issues in continuity that we are having on the discipline end of things. Rarely did our assistant principals have any positive interactions with our students. And that was also something, that led to their unhappiness and wanting to move on quickly. Because, again, we all get into education to help students. But in this role, they were solely, disciplining. And that was challenging for the people in those positions. Staff continuity, the size alone is definitely a challenge, but we didn't have a common language or expectations even for the teachers on what they should be sending to the office, what they should be handling, even just hats. In one area of the building, hats were okay. In the other areas of the building, hats weren't okay. That continuity about expectations throughout the building is very, very challenging. Last year we hired 13 new teachers in our building. This year we're on pace to hire another 6. So making sure that we're communicating and everybody's clear on how things happen wasn't happening. And so that was definitely causing us issues. In some areas kids could run amok. In some areas kids were held to a different standard. And that was something we definitely, wanted to address. Together between the assistant principals and the staff continuity, we were really having just a lack of confidence, driving down staff morale, this feeling that students got treated differently depending on who they were or who they saw, or that teachers weren't supported in their classroom with the discipline principals was definitely driving our culture in a negative direction. The last piece that I would say is a big problem for us is a transient student population. Obviously, this is kind of a trend throughout West Virginia. The coal, oil, and gas industry really hit a lot of us, and I know many of you have seen that in your buildings. Something that's unique to Wheeling and Ohio County is we have quite a few of placements for students that have been removed from their homes for a variety of reasons. Last year alone, we had 200 different students move through Ohio County schools through these placements. There's 7 of them. They come to us with an incredible amount of baggage, special needs, conversations about, do they start in the general population? Do we start them at the alternative center? What is their background? And that was, again, very loose. That lack of communication amongst our administration made it very difficult to manage this transient student population. So when I think about our big problems, these are the 3 big that we hoped PBIS could address and a multi-tiered system of support could address. Together, all 3 of these things kind of lead to this number. And when I think about it now, it still shocks me. In 2018, 2019, we had over 1,000 discipline referrals. And when you pull the data and look at these referrals, the vast majority of them were disrespectful behavior. We had gotten to a place where cussing out our teachers was common. There was no, the discipline range, again, with the assistant principals and that lack of continuity, could range from in-school suspension to out-of-school suspension. But that was one of the ones that was really driving that low teacher morale, was this feeling that students could cuss you out and could maybe just get a day of ice. Skipping was also one of the big ones in here. We had about 21% of our student body receiving a discipline referral. And the amount of administrative time, the morale that this takes, the challenge it is to do this work and only this work on a daily basis, definitely was a major challenge for us. For us this year, our goal was to bring this number down. My thoughts now as the head principal is I want these assistant principals to have an incredible experience. I want them, when they're ready to move on, to have something to talk about, something positive that they've implemented, that they've been a part of in the building outside of discipline. And I can't do that for them unless these numbers draw down and I free up some administrative time and I can start using them as educational leaders in our building and not doling out discipline all day long. So that's a major goal for us. And this number has decreased over the course of the 1920 school year. But we always feel like it could go down more. And we'll talk about how we made those things happen. So for us, big solutions is PBIS. It is a multi-tiered system of support. Through our process, these are the expectations that we've created, not only for our students, but also for our staff. We talk a lot about our staff being the models of positive, attentive, respectful, and keep going. I take a lot of hits about the keep going just because it doesn't flow as well, but it was incredibly important to us to talk about this idea of resiliency, of self-advocacy, of powering through and being tough when things aren't going well. We've talked a lot about keep going in the past 9 weeks with this distance learning. But we have a full belief that PBIS could work for us. But nonetheless, it's a challenge. It's definitely a challenge. And so for any of you that have not, had the experience with PBIS, if I had one thing to say, it would be to attend the trainings, take your time and do these things with fidelity. So I was hired in the summer of 2018, and in the fall of 2018, we put together a team that included teachers as well as a counselor and myself. You have to have your administrators backing to go attend our first training. And it's just not something you're going to implement, on the next day. There's so many pieces to it. The staff buy-in is so incredibly important. Part of that is staff education. When you start rattling off these acronyms, PBIS, MTSS, people go blank. But nonetheless, we tried to educate the staff a little bit. We did a staff buy-in activity in that fall. We were at about of our teachers that said, yeah, this sounds like something we could do or we can try. between the fall and the winter of 2018, that's when we developed our 4 expectations. And so we were able to use those in the winter of 2018. We had a PL day. We were able to use those expectations and connect them to our teachers and build some of our expectations. We also had, we were lucky enough to have Jim Harris come and speak to our staff. He just has a great way about him. He's personable. He uses a really common language and humor, but really makes sense of why you have to kind of teach behaviors. You have to create those expectations. You have to acknowledge those expectations to move forward. And I think the thing he shared the most is that hope is not a strategy. All of our staff hoped that Wheeling Park would get better. But that's not a strategy. PBIS is, and it's research-based, and it can get you there. And that's what I hope to share with you today is that you can make this happen even at a school the size of Wheeling Park High School. But doing this with fidelity takes a lot of time. And so that's why I'm sharing this timeline with you. By the spring of 2019, we had developed a new discipline referral form. We started talking to students about what kind of rewards they would want, what those acknowledgments might look like. And then at the start of the next school year, so this was this past August, we trained our students, we trained our staff, and we fully implemented Tier 1. And even today, when I say those words fully implemented, I kind of laugh because it's not there yet. We missed an entire 9 weeks of tweaking and looking at data and improving our program. But we're getting there. But it does take time and it does take a lot of effort, and it's totally worth it. So when we talk about these big solutions with principal continuity, one of the things we did very early on is we wanted to see what the staff thought our data said. And so we did this kind of survey, and we asked the teachers, what do you think is our biggest issues in the building? And so you can see and I'll just put my cursor on here, the teacher said that disruptive and disrespectful conduct was our biggest issue. In reality, it was. So they were tapped into that. They also said that skipping class was one of our biggest issues. In reality, it was. Tardiness, profane language toward an employee, and then also this possession of tobacco. The only one they really missed was this idea of technology misuse. But our teachers knew exactly what our issues were without looking at the data. And that was important for our principals to recognize as well. Because while the teachers were telling us what they saw, I needed the principals to start looking at the data in real time and in real ways and understanding if these are our issues, how can we address them? How can we attack them? What can we do differently as an administrative team? The other piece of the data that we used was the inconsistency. So if you pulled a first offense skipping, what all kind of discipline was received? And we saw it was across the board. If you cussed out a teacher, what kind of discipline did you receive? And it was all across the board. And this was incredibly important. That data piece was incredibly important for our principals to start to understand, well, no wonder people are frustrated. No wonder people think students, are treated differently based on who they are, who they see. They are. It's true. What teachers were perceiving, our data told us was true. And that was our real first step to saying, okay, we need to do something differently. And that became what we call the cheat sheet. So we just hired a new assistant principal, and I emailed everybody. I said, share the cheat sheet. And what that is it is our basic level 1, level 2 repetitive behaviors and the discipline that our assistant principals use. So all of them know if a student's a first offense skipping, they're getting 5 days of lunch ice. Second offense skipping, they're doing an after school detention. And that really solved that issue of our principals thinking they were on an island. This is what we do. It's not, I'm giving you after school detention. This is what we do for second offense skipping. And that cheat sheet for them is invaluable. That cheat sheet for our teachers really has created a lot more confidence in what the administrative team is doing, to detract from some of these issues that we were having. Yesterday, the assistant principal sat down with the cheat sheet. They sat down with our behavior data from the first 9 weeks, and they said, okay, where do we need to make adjustments? With our cheat sheet, one of the things we said is, it cannot be okay to cuss out a teacher in our building. And we're pretty hard on it. We do anywhere between 3 and 5 days of out-of-school suspension for it. And we have seen that number decrease over 50%. It is rare in just this year and a half that happens in our building anymore. And I'm sure you can appreciate how our teachers appreciate that this isn't happening in our building. And we just have taken a hard line stance. Now, granted, PBIS is a lot about acknowledgement, and we do a lot of that too. But for us, we had to start here. We had to start with cleaning up our discipline game. And the cheat sheet has been, and looking at that data has been really invaluable to us and is very much embedded into our processes now. The other piece that had to become embedded in our process is this communication. That internal communication, we have incredible relationships between our administrative team. We put up our doors and say, what do I do for this? What have you done for that? It's not on the cheat sheet. What does this look like? And that communication for them is a security blanket. They know they've, hashed this out. All of us that have experience with discipline work together, and they feel confident moving forward and, putting things in place for our kids. So that internal communication, that looking at the data, incredibly valuable. One of the things we do right now is we call it a tier 2 meeting. We have those every 10 days. It's all of the counselors and all of our assistant principals. And we sit down and we look at individual student data. And as we build our tier 2, we talk about, are we moving them tier 2 behaviorally? Are we moving them into tier 2 mental health? Are we moving them out of 3 into 2? And what does that look like? But that internal communication is paramount to making this work in a school this size. And that would be the case too for the faculty. Within our faculty senate agenda, there was always a discipline report. And in the past, it was like we had 42 level 1s and 64 level 2s. And part of the language I changed was reporting behaviors. What are our top behaviors? And I think that for teachers really clarifies like what we're dealing with here. One of the most interesting pieces of data is we really started talking about skipping being one of our major behaviors. And we started talking about that in the fall, and then we saw this huge spike in skipping in the winter, starting the third 9 weeks. And I was like, what the heck? How can there be more skipping? We thought there was already a ton of skipping. What we come to find out is our teachers are aware of it and are thinking about it and are catching it and reporting it now. Whereas before, if we had just reported it as a level 2, we would have never really gotten into, the deep of skipping being that issue. And so we have to look at our data in those ways. Why is there a spike here? Well, we've had a whole lot more teachers report it. They're looking at their attendance a whole lot better. They're looking at, they're popping into bathrooms as we've asked them to do a whole lot better. So that communication with our faculty, we don't give them necessarily like a copy of our cheat sheet, but they know we have that. And they know we use it and they know we stick to it. So if there's ever a question like, why didn't he get, I can pull that data, and that principal also knows there's some accountability to it as well. So communicating that to our faculty has been very, very valuable to us. The other piece is communicating with our students. We do have a student handbook that outlines 4373, but for some of these pieces, we're just very clear about what the consequences. We're clear about our expectations and teaching those expectations as you do in PBIS, but we're also very clear about our discipline and our consequences for some behaviors as well. And we think that being upfront lets the kids know where the line is and what that looks like if you cross it. And they too don't. There used to be like, well, why did they get and he didn't? And we said, no, everybody, that's how it goes. No. There's some gray space, especially when you get into fights and who instigated or bullying and those things that, are very time consuming, are very gray. But for these basic items, we go to the cheat sheet, we use it, we communicate it with our faculty, we communicate it with our students, we review it to make it better, on a very regular basis. So we feel like these three things really have been a game changer for us in this principal continuity, and are valuable to use. One of the major pieces after you've established your expectations is teaching those expectations. And we have been very, have done this with fidelity. We use class meetings at the beginning of each semester. We pull all of our grade levels together, and we review the expectations by location. We review, this is when we share out kind of the cheat sheet and some of those consequences. But it's a great opportunity for all of our students to hear the exact same message, and to reinforce, even when they come back from Christmas break, this is time to reinforce those expectations, so that they're fully aware. We use homeroom during the first week of school, and our homeroom teachers review expectations by location. This is where they talk about, this is what the bathroom looks like. This is what the hallways look like. And at the high school, it seems kind of silly, but, and I'll talk about it in a little bit, but that's one of the things it's not just about, like, what does it mean to be positive? What does it mean to be attentive in the hallway? Well, it means to be off your phone so you don't run into people. It means to use the right side of the hallway when you're walking a certain direction. You still have to do that work at the high school level, and share that on a regular basis. One of the ways to share that is through visuals. We're having all new posters made this summer to have them be a little bit more sturdy and clear. We ask all of our teachers to hang our park signs in their classrooms. It has to become an embedded language in your building. And that's where this common language piece, and even our administrators, you'll hear them say, like, are you being respectful? Like, are you attending to what, Mr. John is asking you to do? Like, no, you're not being very positive right now. Like, what's a solution to this problem? We really use that language throughout our building. And it's challenging to do at a building this size. I always say to get people together to hear the same message, the sun and the moon and the stars have to line up, or you have to have like an act of Congress to get everybody together. So we had to, really be creative in how we shared our Monday message. And how we shared our expectations. So one of the things we did come up with was this idea of a Monday message. And so for this past school year, this was shown first period by every single teacher. We have a little extra time built in for our second chance breakfast. So while they're eating breakfast, they watch Monday message. And I wanted to share one of these with you. We do everything we can to share school-wide positive events and information. But this one in particular, we did some small videos. We partnered with our radio and TV class to ask students what it means. And so you'll hear them talk about it. But at the end of every Monday message, we remind our students that we are positive, we are attentive, we are respectful, and we keep going. Sometimes there's little cartoons that go along with it. Sometimes there's a quote. Sometimes it's a little YouTube video that I have found that goes along with that thought. Here's this Monday message, which again is a way to reinforce and reteach, and part of that universal tier of the MTSS that's so important to build that common language.
Good morning and welcome to Monday Message. Let's start off by congratulating some of our athletic teams. This past week, our golf team competed in the state tournament, and they brought home the AAA State Runner-Up Trophy. Noah Sievertson brought home the AAA State Individual Runner-Up. So congratulations, guys. Great job. And then our volleyball team, this is a first in school history. This past Saturday, they won the 5A OVAC championship. So congratulate these ladies if you see them. It was a great accomplishment, and we're so proud of both of these teams. It is officially exam week. So today, you should be taking your English Language Arts test and your science test. Tomorrow is math and social studies. Wednesday is for the PSAT. So if you signed up for that, be prepared for the PSAT on Wednesday morning. And then Thursday is an opportunity to take makeup tests. And we have moved week 3 clubs to Thursday, so not to interfere with the PSAT on Wednesday. And then the week rounds up with the best news of all. You guys don't have school on Friday. It is a professional learning day for staff. And so you guys get a nice long weekend. We hope you enjoy it. Student Council had the opportunity to meet last week, and they wanted to make sure you guys were aware that they have a lot of social media out there by grade. So here are all the Twitter and Instagram pages. I have also added these to the Schoology individual groups, so you can check those out there. Be sure to follow, be sure to like. We stay connected throughout the school year. It's a great opportunity to know what's happening in the building. Lastly, I am not the only positive park person around here, so check out this short video and enjoy.
We've got spirit, yes we do. We've got spirit, how about you? The teachers, how kind they are.
Being in clubs like Love to Buy and supporting the football team.
And I like the staff around here.
Baseball team. Clubs of sports.
Choir and the speech and theater departments here.
I love seeing what everybody else loves about Wheeling Park High School. Remember, we are positive, attentive, respectful, and we keep going. Have a great short week, Wheeling Park High School.
So that is, again, one of the videos we did. We did that for positive. We did that for attentive. We asked kids what it meant to be respectful, what it means to keep going. And each week we shared one of those. But it was a fun way for us to reinforce our expectations. And continually, we use the Monday message to address that piece. One of the other things we do is, so we use park cards. Our teachers give out park cards when they catch a student being positive, attentive, respectful, or keep going. We collect those weekly. We do drawings from those weekly. And so we really wanted to build a moment for when we did those drawings. So on Wednesdays, we have what we call activity period. But we had a beloved counselor in our building, and his thing was always respect, which is one of our expectations. And he would always play the trumpet at our pep rallies and would talk about respect. It happened for decades, literally, in our building. And so we went to the band. He had recently passed away, and we went to the band and had one of their trumpet players record it for us. And so when we're getting ready to do park card drawings, we play that little tune, and then we have a script, and it talks about, have you been positive, attentive, respectful, or did you keep going this week? Well, let's find out. And it's just a script, and when the kids hear that music, they know we're doing park. It's just very much a part of our routine now, and you have to find ways, especially in these large schools, to embed it and to do it on a routine basis to really get it to be a part of your language and to cover that universal tier. The hardest part is to just constantly be hammering it, and I can't rely on 140 teachers to say it every day. That's just not realistic. So we had to create processes to make that happen for ourselves. So that communication piece, I think, is really important for staff. The buy-in piece for this was really, really challenging. Again, we did an activity at the beginning where they watched a little video about PBIS and said, you want to do this? And we had 50% kind of like, yeah, sure, okay, I don't know, And then even after we had Jim come, we did another one, and it was still only like at 59%. And I was like, yeah, sure, yeah, I've seen it come, I've seen it go. What do you want us to do? And so that made us really realize we need to incorporate our teachers a whole lot more in what this means. When we were educating our staff, and if you're going to do this as well, I really recommend this tier model, this kind of picture. I think a lot of times what's missed on people is that the universal, it stays constantly throughout. And when you have to do targeted interventions, tier 2 interventions, you add those as well as the universal. And even at the intensive tier 3, you add those while keeping the tier 2 and keeping the universal. So as an example of that, we have students at the Ohio County Learning Center. That is our alternative school. And so they are getting intensive one-on-one behavior instruction, small group instruction. They're doing community service, things like that. But then they are also still getting the tier 2 intervention. So we have what's called a park advisory, which is a reflection piece where you look at what it means to be positive and do some activities. They do that as well. And then they also watch the Monday message and hear about, our expectations on a regular basis. So I think it's really, this is something that gets lost on some of the pictures. It's like, if you move to tier 2, you're done in tier 1. That's not the case. And really kind of informing our teachers of what that looks like, and this idea that some kids need more, very few kids need even more than that, was helpful to them to understand. The other thing I would recommend when you're educating your staff is to compare it to education, compare it to teaching. Behavior is learned. And we get to choose how we teach it to them, and what those expectations are. I used to explain to them when I went to the middle school, I was shocked when our 6th graders, we would walk them to the bathroom and teach them how to do that. And we would walk them to the water fountain and teach them how to do that. And we would walk them to the cafeteria and teach them what that looks like. And then at the high school, we don't do any of those things. We don't do any of those expectations in that clear-cut way. We just assume they know how to go through the lunch line with 1,500 other kids. And it's that assumption, you have to break that down when you start talking about teaching your expectations. Jim Harris was great for us. I've already mentioned him, but Amy Kelly does a wonderful job. Alicia, I took a lot away from her last summer. She really helped me get my thoughts together when we had to the staff. So having one of these experts come just makes it sound more real and more legitimate than I ever could. And I feel like I'm pretty versed in it at this point. But it does make a difference, and I would highly recommend any one of them to support you through that. I think the other piece, and I talked about this kind of with the timeline, is it takes time. This is not something you're going to get your people to do in a 9 weeks. It took us 6 months of using PL time, of meeting monthly as a team, of going to tier 1 trainings to really get our feet underneath of us. So it's a process that you have to build and stick with and do with fidelity. And then the last piece that I think was a game changer for us is the reality of how PBIS is utilized every single day, even in our worlds. And when we did our training on the first day of school this past August, one of the things I asked the teachers to do is I said, raise your hand if you use your Kroger card, which is our grocery store here, and they give you, money off of gas. And everybody raises their hand. Okay, tell me if you have a Prime membership, for your free shipping, and everybody raises their hand. Tell me if you use, your Finish Line card, so you get, and all the fellas raise their hand. And I said, you guys are being PBIS every single day. Who uses Kohl's Cash? Hands raised. Yep, you are being PBIS. They want you, the behavior they want is for you to shop in their store and spend money, and they're rewarding you for it, for meeting those positive expectations. And people started to nod. The other piece you'll hear a lot is, why am I rewarding kids for something they already know how to do? And I said, okay, so let's talk about that. And again, this is stuff that I got from Alicia last summer. I asked them, I said, raise your hand if you've ever potty trained a child. And, all the parents raised their hand. I said, okay, keep your hand up in the air if you use some sort of treat, whether that be stickers or TV or M&Ms. And almost all of them raised their hand. I said, all right, keep your hand in the air if you are still giving Skittles every time your 9-year-old goes and potties. And they all put their hand down. And so that really helped them understand that we're not constantly rewarding the exact same behavior. There is an ebb and flow to that. At the beginning of the year, you should be giving out more part cards because you have more expectations in your classroom that you need to teach, and you want to acknowledge when they do well. In my own personal classroom, I had a whole way that I wanted them to come in, get their folders out, hand them back in. Had we had PBIS when I was teaching, I would have done that. Maybe you have warm-ups. All right, they come in, they open their Chromebook, they start in the warm-ups. Acknowledge that. Give them a part card. They are meeting your expectation. Are you going to do that for the rest of the year? No. Just like you don't Skittles to your 9-year-old for peeing. Those things ebb and flow. And those two pieces for our teachers, really light bulbs went off and were very, very valuable. That reality of PBIS, those logistical pieces are important to touch upon when you're teaching them. The other piece that really helped was the staff involvement. I've mentioned we did the survey where we wanted to know, what do you guys see as the problems? And we did that before we created our expectations. And our teachers said our number one problem is disrespectful behavior. So we knew we had to have respect as one of our expectations. That's the piece when you talk about staff involvement, is they have to see their input as being a part of the output. We did a whole piece on classroom versus office managed behaviors. And I did this at Triadelphia and I did it at Wheeling Park. It's really valuable. And all I did is basically took all of the behaviors out of 4373, put them on Post-its, and then created two big posters, one that said office managed, one that says teacher managed. I was not involved in these conversations. I had PBIS team members. It's best if you don't have an administrator in the room for this conversation, but you ask your team of teachers, take these behaviors and put them where they belong. And we had almost 100% continuity on that. We had 4 different groups of teachers doing this, and almost all of them came up with the same thing. So the teachers were telling us that this basic disrespectful behavior, these basic technology abuses, those are teacher managed. They don't need to come to the office. Second offense cheating, maybe that does need to come to the office. And so with that, we were able to then create a new 4370 form. So I'm going to show you it real quick. So basically our teachers told us these are the behaviors that they should be handling. And then we added this. These are some interventions that you can use for these teacher managed behaviors. And then down here comes your office managed. But we had our teachers identify this before we created the form, so it spoke to their input. That involvement is incredibly important. One of the other activities we did, once we had park identified, I had 4 big whiteboards, and on one of them it said positive, one said attentive, one said respectful, one said keep going. And then we divided teachers into groups, and one of them talked about just the restroom. What does it mean to be positive in the restroom? What does it mean to be attentive in the restroom? What does it mean to be respectful in the restroom? And so the teachers created that language, and then we pulled the repetitive things that we saw from all the different groups, and we made the posters out of it. That involvement, them understanding these pieces to the puzzle and just not having your PBIS team doing it, especially with the building our size, was really, really a step forward for us in getting them to understand where we were trying to go. And that just led to this ownership. We even asked our teachers, if we're going to use these park cards, how should we do that? Should we use an online app? Do you want to use like this QR code, online form? Do you just want to use a paper slip? Now, granted, in this data, paper slip didn't win, but we are also implementing one-to-one Chromebooks. Our teachers' heads were spinning a little bit in technology, and so we decided that basic paper slips would be what's best for us. So our teachers saw their input, and that created their buy-in. They saw their input come out in this new discipline referral form. They saw their input in our posters. So these are our posters by location. I think one of the funniest is, did I put it on here? Get in, get out, and go back to class. That was one of the keep going pieces for restrooms, and teachers came up with that. This idea, be above the drama, that is teacher language. And then they see it on our signs in our hallways and know that we are listening to them, because they are the front lines. They know our building as well as anybody. And so those things, are really important to get that teacher buy-in to understand how valuable this can be for them in their classroom and in this building. Again, hope is not a strategy. PBIS is. So with all of those things and all of those kind of solutions, we had incredible results. This is from, so the blue was 2 years ago. This was this past school year. And this is total discipline referrals. Our discipline referrals went down 35%. We're really, really proud of that number. I mean, you're talking about going from 1,000 discipline referrals to, we dropped that by hundreds. We're down into 700, I believe. Disrespectful conduct's down over 50%. So we're really, really pleased. And we believe it's a combination of talking about and acknowledging and rewarding our expectations, but also being very, very consistent with our discipline and our consequences across all of our assistant principals and our teachers with the 4373 form. So these are actually, this is a picture of our park card. You can see it has a student name, a teacher name, a date, and the comments. These are what we draw. We had 10,000 park cards given out in the first 3-9 weeks. We draw 10 of these every single week and give out all kinds of different prizes. For example, if it's homecoming week and we're doing tie-dye day, we might give out tie-dye kits. Now, funding all of those things is a different story, but we have been, we have been creative. Reach out to your community. That's a whole different conversation on how to fund PBIS and make those things happen. Use your community. We use things like dance income. We have parking passes that kids buy that we use to support this. And obviously, we use some WEBIS money where we can. But we gave out 270 prizes, 10 a week. One of the other things we do is we PBIS our teachers. And that's something I would really recommend as well. So when we draw park cards, we then draw from those 10, and the teacher that wins, they get a special parking pass for the week. And then they also have the choice to get a free lunch or to wear jeans one day. So we're working really hard to acknowledge our teachers as well for doing exactly what we want them to do. And then we also do we did 9-week prizes. We drew 16 9-week prizes out of the whole park bin for the 9 weeks. Those were $25 gift cards. Again, funding is a whole different conversation, but we were blessed to be able to do that. And the kids love it. The kids love it. The teachers really appreciate it. And it's making big changes in our building. As we move on, and as I wrap up, this year, has really expanded our knowledge. We're working into Tier 2. Like I said, we have those Tier 2 meetings. We have some really interesting pieces in place for students with mental health issues and attendance issues. We use an MTS model across all of our academics, attendance, behavior, as well as mental health. It's embedded into our conversations now. What tier is a student? And then what do we really do? We call them kind of the trifectas, those that have all of those things kind of working against them in their lives right now. But for this year, our goal really is to help our teachers understand our students a little bit better. Relationship building, especially after the pandemic and the distance learning, is paramount. So we're going to be, really pushing, rather than just talking about teaching expectations, we're going to be talking about building relationships in their classroom because we know those positive relationships can draw down negative behaviors. So we'll be sharing more information with our high schools about trauma-informed care, resiliency that really speaks to our keep going piece. Self-regulation is something that, we really want our teachers to understand what happens to a student when they're not self-regulated. But then I think it's also interesting on their part to understand what does your behavior look like when you aren't self-regulated, and how can the combination of that really create some issues for our kids. And then eventually we hope to get into a space of like restorative justice and also build out much more positive discipline pieces, especially for our kids that have repetitive like anger issues, kids that have drug and alcohol abuse issues. We know that we're not solving a problem when we just suspend for 10 days. So then how can we build interventions for those kids to come out of that suspension with some skills and with some success, and how can we help move them forward? So we still have a ton of work, but we're happy with these first couple, months, this first year really of having Tier 1 fully embedded. And I hope some of these things are valuable to you. Any of the processes that we put into place, if you have questions about how you could do the same or what that looked like and would like me to expand on that, I'm happy to help. I think more than anything, I just want to advocate, PBIS. I've had 2 incredible experiences with it and really positive results. I 100% believe in implementing with fidelity, using your data, and rewarding your kids, teaching your kids and rewarding your kids when they're doing the right things. It's a game changer. So I hope this was valuable to you today, and thank you for your time.
Thank you so Meredith. You've done an excellent job, and I can assure you that if it can be done at Wheeling Park, it can be done in your schools. It's such a gigantic school, and they do such a great job of really working on getting those essential features in place and doing it with fidelity. Right now, I'm working on typing in this code for you so you can go do the link to sign in to get your certification of attendance. If for some reason that doesn't work, let me know, because for some reason it's struggling with letting me copy and paste that. Meredith, we appreciate you so much and your time, and we wish you good luck as you take on the head principalship at Wheeling Park.